This is the final night of our tour of my cruise. In another hour or so, we should be into Victoria, British Columbia. I had a blast. This whole was wonderful. One or two disappointments, but God is always good, and I'm surviving. I'm enjoying myself. I'm tired, but I should be leaving tomorrow morning, disembarking the ship, and not arriving in Nassau till Sunday morning. But I had a wonderful time. I'm enjoying myself. Now on to Canada. Well, I made it to Canada now. Going on a bus excursion tour for the next hour. This should be fun. Brought all my cameras and ready to go.
Yeah, some have got the.
You guys might have already received some of those, but we are on Vancouver Island. We are not in Vancouver. That's about an hour and 30 minutes northeast of us across the water. And since we're on an island, there's no land bridges connecting us. So if you need to make it back to Washington State, you either would have to take a cruise ship, a ferry, a helicopter, a plane, or if your name was Marilyn Bell in the 1950s, you would swim 10 and a half hours that direction. You guys are welcome to do that tonight, but I'm pretty sure none of us are actually going to join you on that trip. So I'm really grateful that we get to have a little bit of the city at sunset as well as a little bit at nighttime as we get kind of both worlds here. But during the day, this is a very active city. Lots of people running around, cycling, skateboarding, even parasailing off the cliff's edge here. It's absolutely stunning. And we attract so many people from around North America, mainly because of our climate. We have the most mild climate in Canada, to the point where in the summer, it almost never gets hotter than 80 degrees, and in the winter, it almost never drops below 45. So for that reason, we have the largest density of retirees in the country. So when I was growing up, there was a fun expression for Victoria. We were known as the city of the newlyweds, nearly deads, flower beds, and potheads. I promise you, nothing has changed in 30 years. Those are pretty concrete in our city. But nowadays, we do have quite the bustling nightlife in our downtown core, as well as lots of luxury boutiques. Now, just on the right-hand side here coming up, you're gonna see a little tiny pond here, and you'll see some little miniature lighthouses in said pond. That is actually one of the country's only RC dedicated boat racing ponds. So if you go during the day, you'll see kids and adults of all ages racing their boats around, often facing off with some very angry Canadian geese. I will say this, we're probably gonna run into some today. So if you do see one, just remember, not everything in Canada is so friendly. They will hiss at you and they will nip at your ankles. So just be very, very cautious and get a nice little distance selfie. And if you did miss it, just on the right-hand side of the bus here, across the water, those are the Olympic Mountains, Washington State, and where that cargo ship is, that's actually Port Angeles. Also, if you see anything at any point during the tour and you have any questions, feel free to come up and chat with me at one of our stops. I would absolutely love to answer any questions to the best of my abilities. All right, let's give you some whiplash. Speaking of those Canadian geese, if we look to the left-hand side, you're gonna see two different things. One is a sign that says mile zero marker, just by that family there. And then behind it, there's a statue of a gentleman with a prosthetic leg. I'm gonna tell you about both. The mile zero marker, that is the start of the Trans-Canada Highway. That is the longest highway on the planet. It goes from the west coast of Canada to the east coast through 10 different provinces. It is 4,800 miles long. Take you about 135 hours to drive it. I have never personally done it, as my butt would not last in a chair for that long. But the statue behind the mile zero marker, so again, it's just going to be on the left-hand side of us. That is a statue of a local Canadian hero named Terry Fox. Now, if you've never heard of Terry Fox, at the age of 17 years old, he actually lost his leg to cancer, but he decided that he was going to run across our country with his prosthetic to raise money for cancer research. So he started on the east coast of Canada, sadly only made it about halfway to Thunder Bay, Ontario before he passed away, but he did get the ball rolling, and he helped raise over $865 million for cancer research here in Canada. So if you ever hear someone talk about Terry Fox Day, it's where they'll shut down school districts, let the kids run around, blow up some additional steam, and then collect some donations from the parents. Also, we've got some lowriders coming up on the right-hand side. We've got a few car meets in the city this week. But all of this area to the right of us, all this green space, this is our crown jewel of the city. This is 200 acres of land that was once privately owned, known as Beacon Hill Park. So it was actually gifted to the city of Victoria on 3 restrictions. 1, we can't build a fence around it. 2, we can't charge any fees for entry. And 3, no commercial businesses are allowed on the grounds. We do have a beautiful children's petting zoo in there, but it is by donation only. So as we're driving by, take a look through the trees. You might spot some of our local animals, including our deer, as well as our local peacocks. So if you see some of the peacocks with their beautiful feathers on display, those are actually the males trying to impress the females. Little fact for you. Now, we're going to slow down here as much as we can, and if you look to the right-hand side, again, keep your eyes open for some of the local wildlife, but you're going to start to see this beautiful little lake called Good Acre Lake. There's some stunning water fountains that you're about to see. Actually, they might be off today. Ah, there they are. And then do you see that beautiful stone bridge in the background? Some of you might actually recognize it. If you do recognize it, you are probably a fan of Hallmark movies, as that has been in 25 different Hallmark movies. If you don't recognize it, sprinkle a little bit of fake snow, add a couple kissing, I'm sure you can put 2 and 2 together. Basically what I'm trying to say, this is a very beautiful park. This is somewhere I highly recommend you take a look at if you have a chance to come back to Victoria. Plus, since we are a British city, lots of polo and cricket, and putting greens if you need to work on your short game like I do. Now, on the left-hand side of the bus, there's this beautiful red brick schoolhouse that was finished in the late 1800s. This is South Park School. Now, I promise you, there is no relation to the show, but that is known as one of the oldest continually operating schoolhouses in Western Canada, also known for having the first female principal in our country. Now, as we go through the core, we're going to start to see some First Nations artwork. So there's a lot of exhibits here, and if you look to the left-hand side, just through these trees, you're going to start to see some beautiful hand-carved and hand-painted totem poles just tucked in there. And we actually get to see the carving house where they were created. So some people can kind of already start to see it. It's on the left of us, just past this intersection. It is a white building with a beautiful mural of a face on it. So that is the Chief Mungo Martin Carving House, and the reason that the First Nations would put the murals on the buildings is they would put them facing the water's edge, so as you would sail by, you would immediately recognize the art style and know you're in the right spot. So we don't have a chance to see it today, but back in Beacon Park where we just passed, that's actually home to the tallest freestanding totem pole on the planet at 127 feet tall. There is a different city in British Columbia that built one a little bit taller, but it has guide wires, so they cheated, so it doesn't actually count. So again, if you have a chance to come back to Beacon Park, highly recommend taking a look. Also, everybody, eyes left on the bus, look behind us a little bit, and you will see the beautiful Chief Mungo Martin Carving House. So again, that's where a lot of our local totem poles were actually created. Now, we have now entered the downtown core of Victoria, and we are heading towards our first stop of the evening. And if I haven't already ruined the surprise, we are heading to Tim Hortons, better known as Timmy Ho's. Hey. I will say this, we do have Starbucks. You'll see one on the right-hand side coming up here, just on the wall there. And a little fact for you. If anybody on the bus likes Starbucks better than Tim Hortons, legally, you have to walk back to the cruise ship. So you all have free will. I'm not going to judge you, but I will make you walk back. So just be aware. I will say this, all jokes aside, this is my first tour of the day. This is now going to be my 4th time going to Tim Hortons today. So trust me, it is very, very much worth it. And you'll see why as we continue through the core here. All right. So as we keep going, you're going to notice lots of green and white bike paths all along the roadway here. So we are one of the most bike accessible cities in the country, to the point where we have about 40,000 bike paths all around our downtown core. This is mainly out of necessity, as our gas is so incredibly expensive here, but I will show it to you a little bit later, as it's a little bit more dramatic and just a little bit more fun for me. I also don't want you to miss what's coming up on the right-hand side of the bus. Again, we are a very British city, so we have to have our local pubs here. Coming up on the right-hand side on the corner, you'll see one called the Sticky Wicket. And then if you look all the way down this street to the right-hand side, you are going to see one of the most beautiful religious buildings in the city, the Christ Cathedral Church, with its beautiful stained glass, stunning architectural style. And little not-so-fun fact about that building, it actually burnt down 3 separate times. And on the 3rd time, they realized maybe making a church solely out of wood was not the best idea. So they built it out of stone, and it's lasted for over 100 years ever since. Another very famous one coming up on the left-hand side of the bus here. This beautiful red brick church. This is the St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church, widely known for the Gothic architecture and, once again, the stained glass. All right, now we are going to have a chance to talk a little bit about how Victoria actually became Victoria. So right in front of us, this is Fort Street. So if you lived here in the 1800s, there was absolutely nothing here except a big wooden structure to the left-hand side of us called Fort Victoria. which was set up by a company called the Hudson's Bay to trade furs and pelts with our local Lekwungen First Nations. See how it all kind of ties back together? Now, the Hudson's Bay quickly realized there was quite the monetary opportunity in the city. They demolished the fort after about 20 years, and then they quickly helped grow the city into what you see nowadays. So a lot of the buildings we're going to see around the downtown core today are designated as heritage sites. So the facades have been left untouched, while the interiors have been updated to suit a more modern lifestyle for us. All right, who likes McDonald's? Got people? Actually, less than I expected. But there's a McDonald's on the left here. They have cultural menu items all around the world. Here in Canada, however, our cultural menu item is poutine. If you don't know what that is, you get a big bowl of McDonald's fries. They put cheese curds on top of it. They pour brown gravy all over it. It is the best hangover cure you have ever had in your life. I guarantee it. And for anyone that is planning to go to Montreal anytime soon, the proper French pronunciation is actually poutine. For you. All right, leading into the hangover cure, there's a very fun building coming up on the left-hand side. On the left of the bus, there's another red brick building with a big sign that says farm on the side of it. Do you guys see that?
Yep.
So in the 1870s, that was one of the most well-known butchers here in the city. Currently, however, that is our most lucrative cannabis dispensary. So cannabis is 100% legal here. What is super illegal is to tuck and roll off a moving bus, go grab some wacky tobacco, bring it on the cruise ship, and then blame Wesley. So if you guys are looking for the devil's lettuce, you got to come back for a second trip and promise not to tell. Jokes aside, everyone does ask me the benefits of legalization. Like a lot of other countries and a lot of other states, it is taxed. So it's only been legal here since about 2018. But in that time, it's raised over $165 million of taxes for the province of British Columbia. And if you ever wondered where the term BC Bud came from, it comes from British Columbia. All right, enough about that. Back to architecture. If you look to the left-hand side, you'll see another beautiful red brick building with a stunning clock tower on the side of it. This is our Victoria City Hall. Absolutely beautiful. The clock tower often reminds me of Back to the Future. But that looks a little small, especially for a city of over 400,000 people. And that's because we're not actually one city. We are 13 different municipalities all squished together, much like a smaller Los Angeles. But that means we have 13 different mayors here. So whenever there is a decision that needs to be made, it sadly does not take a week. It takes about a decade. So here in the city, we love our cars, we love our fishing, we love our golfing, we love our cannabis, but we especially love our politicians. Maybe just a little bit of sarcasm on the last one. Now, directly right up ahead here, I talked about the Hudson's Bay Company a few blocks ago, but we actually get to see the original Hudson's Bay department store that has been left untouched since the mid-1800s. So just on the right-hand side here, you'll see this beautiful white stone building with these hand-carved intricate stone columns with a little tag on the side that says the Hudson. This was the original Hudson's Bay department store. So again, facade has been left untouched, whereas the interior has now been updated to our local Victoria public market. So that's where you can get some locally grown produce, some protein, some artisan-made products. And if you collect too many things, as all of us do, we're only human, you can store it in one of the beautiful one-bedroom apartments that's right above the Hudson's Bay department store. Super affordable. It's only about $1.1 million. Now, part of my job as a tour guide is to convince people to come back here. Not making a great case for myself with the cost, but that's a reality of Victoria. We are one of the most expensive cities in the country, to the point where our minimum wage here is $17 an hour, but our minimum cost of living is over $23 an hour. So someone didn't quite do their math right there. So it's very common for locals here to moonlight in a variety of different industries, like for example, a bus driver or a nighttime tour guide. And don't worry, Bruce and I love to golf. We only have to work on days that end in Y. All right, now we are on the way to our first stop of the evening, which is the very famous Tim Hortons. It was started by a gentleman named Miles Horton. He was a professional hockey player for 24 seasons. After his passing, his partner actually grew the business into over 6,000 locations in 13 different countries, including the United States and the United Arab Emirates. Now we just are passing by it now, but there's a red building here that says Petro-Canada. Our gas right now is 176.9 per liter. When you convert that to USD per gallon, that is roughly $6.50 per gallon. So it is one of the most expensive gas in the country, but that's why most people actually ride bikes here. But I have a little tip. Does anyone on board have one of the new fancy electric bikes or a scooter? If you do, you have to be very careful, as we have police officers on our bike paths here with little radar guns, and if they track you going over 35 miles per hour, they will give you a $250 speeding ticket. Ask me how I know. I've received several. I will say this, the ticket doesn't sting quite as much as the ego when you're pulled over by a police officer on a bike. That hurts a little more, but word to the wise for it. Now, we're going to take a quick right-hand turn here, and we're going to go inside Tim Hortons. The biggest thing I can tell you, though, is the less time we spend here, the more time we get at our second stop, which overlooks the entire Victoria Inner Harbor. So all of our drinks and snacks, they're already ready for us. Just walk inside. I'll be on the left-hand side. Just remind me what you ordered. We'll grab it, and then we can immediately bring it right back on the bus. I just ask that you leave your lids on. If you guys do want any extra treats from Tim Hortons, one of the lovely staff members on the right can give you a hand. Otherwise, everything that I have for you today is already paid for and covered. If anyone is unable to get off the bus, don't worry, you can stay on board. I will bring your drinks on for you. For everybody else who is able to, if you want to follow behind me, the Beetles, the cabs, all of them, they are all over the city here, so much so that most locals actually pick them up, restore them, turn them into their daily drivers, as importing vehicles is quite expensive here. I myself actually drive an 88 Cabriolet. I know it is a hairstylist car, but don't worry, there's a V6 going in it very soon. All right, now, a very important building coming up on the right-hand side. No, it's not the Subway, and no, it's not the Wendy's. But behind the Wendy's, there is a beautiful red brick castle structure that we're about to see. This is the Bay Street Armory. Now, if you can't quite see it yet, don't worry, we're going to drive right past it. But this armory here, this was built in the early 1900s to actually train some of the local militias here that were on Vancouver Island. Now, nowadays, it's no longer used for that purpose. It's actually used partially by the Canadian military for training and storage. So you see some camoed vehicles just tucked in the parking lot there. And if you go inside during the day, it's actually a museum. So you go inside, you can see a little bit of Canadian military history over the past 100 years, including some firearms, cannons, uniforms, even some battle plans here. Once again, at the Bay Street Armory. Wow, I forgot the name of it for a quick second. All right, important question. Do we have any Swifties on board? Yeah, we got a couple Swifties. Well, we're not quite big enough to cause an earthquake like she did in Seattle, but we obviously want to get some larger events here. So just coming up on the left-hand side of the bus, as we crest these trees, we are going to go past our Save On Foods Memorial Arena. So just on the left-hand side here, this little arena, it's nothing too crazy. It's only about 7,000 seats, but we've seen everything from Carlos Santana, ZZ Top, Avril Lavigne, Jordan Peterson, Jimmy Carr, Cirque du Soleil, and we actually used to have an NHL team here in the 1924, and they did actually win the Stanley Cup. So they were called the Victoria Cougars, and it didn't last very long. After about 2 years, the entire team was dissolved. But if anyone on the bus is from Detroit, most of the players actually went on to play for the Detroit Red Wings. Now, we no longer have an NHL team here. The closest one would be the Vancouver Canucks, just again, across the water, about an hour and a half. But a little bit of a fact about the Stanley Cup. Some of you were probably watching it. At the very start, I mentioned I'm from Calgary, Alberta. In Calgary, we do not like the Edmonton Oilers, so congratulations, Florida Panthers, on your very well-deserved Stanley Cup. I was cheering for the Stars for a while, but you know what? As long as Edmonton doesn't win, I'm pretty happy. Also, one of these days, I'm going to have someone on Edmonton on this bus, and they're going to be fighting words, but until then, I think we're pretty safe. Now, we're going to take a right-hand turn here and continue to head towards the Chinatown district of Victoria. But there's an emblem coming up here on the right-hand side of the bus that I want you to take a look at. So it's not quite yet, but just at this crosswalk here, if you look to the right-hand side, glowing in white lights on the side of this wall here, you're going to see an emblem with 2 stags and a fox. That is one of the last remaining Hudson's Bay emblems in the city. The reason for this is the Hudson's Bay did actually have a role in pushing the First Nations off their land. And the reason I'm telling you this is the most important part about history is not forgetting it. So not everything in the city of Victoria is all great and happy-go-lucky, but it would be doing you injustice if I didn't give you the entire experience of our city. Now, there's no prizes on the line, so you don't have to raise your hand, you can just shout it out. But does anybody know the oldest Chinatown in North America?
Victoria.
It's not Victoria.
New York.
It's not New York. It is San Francisco, yeah, correct. Do you know what the second oldest is?
Victoria.
It is Victoria, yeah. I'll give you a hint, it was already said. Now, there's a reason why we are the second oldest Chinatown, and that's because we had a gold rush in the mid-1800s where we had a lot of Chinese families immigrating from San Francisco to the point where our population here went from over 500 to 50,000 in just a few months. So if you look to the left here, you're going to see a mural of one of the Chinese families that came here in 1905, kind of at the tail end. And on the right-hand side, you will see our traditional Chinese schoolhouse. So So absolutely stunning building. The interior uses a lot of a woodworking style called joinery, which is creating very tight-fitting wood joints with minimal to no glue, screws, or nails. All right, now I'm gonna try to tuck behind my seat as best as I can so you guys can get some lovely photos of these stunning gates that we are about to pass under as we go through Chinatown. So directly ahead of us, these are the gates of harmonious interest. So there's beautiful gold leaf on the very top. There's several names of fallen soldiers that helped Canada fight during World War II and sadly lost their lives. And on either side of the gates, you'll see these lion statues. Those are actually time capsules. The one on the left is set to open in 2050, the one on the right in 2080. And
Do you want your camera? Look at the old guy, the old guy.
Oh, yeah, ask our tour guide, dude. Wait, then I can... John, where are you going?
Right here.
Right there? Okay. So then I can at least finish.
I like that very much.
That's the way we're layered and all out cover.
You just gotta have one eye out. Like an album
First one's
cover.
normal.
And then we're doing like the album cover.
And then we're doing the album cover where everyone has to look like whimsical.
Oh. Okay.